Afternoon, we call this meeting of the MSJC Community College to order. We're meeting in our Temecula campus. And now move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand. Trustee Smith, can you lead us in the pledge? Allegiance to the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.3, roll call.
Trustee Ashley,
Present.
Trustee Carpenter, Trustee Corona,
Present.
Trustee Smith,
Present.
Trustee Silva,
Here.
Student Trustee Cardenas,
Present.
Academic Senate John Torres,
Present.
Classified Senate Ronnie Armas, Student Government Association Claudia Wakuko.
Thank you. 1.4, approval of minutes, regular meeting of January 16th, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote from the student trustee now.
Aye.
All right, everyone, please vote. Aye.
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 Vote. We will move on to 1.5, revision, adoption, ordering of the agenda. We have one slight revision. Item 8.7, stipends, is revised to ratify a previously approved stipend payout. So slight revision there. Other than that, the meeting is going to be conducted in its regular order. We'll move on to item 2.1 now, comments of individual groups, delegations limited to closed session items. Is there anyone that would like to speak today for closed session items? I don't think so. Well, we'll wait. I'll wait.
30 seconds.
We didn't adopt.
Reading of the agenda?
We will.
Okay.
I guess we should wait for Jackie to come back.
No closed session on it.
Okay,
Okay.
and on item 1.5, can the student trustee please vote?
Aye.
On revision, adoption, ordering of agenda 1.5, do we, please vote? Aye.
Aye.
And we have on item 2.1, public comment. We have no one to comment, so we can move on now to closed session. So we'll adjourn to closed session pursuant to all public applicable education codes, government codes, and recently enacted statutes. The Board of Trustees will meet in closed session to discuss and act on the following matters. 3.2, conference with labor negotiator, CTA. 3.3, conference with legal counsel, potential litigation. Item 3.4, conference with real property negotiator. 3.5, public employee discipline, dismissal, release. And 3.6, we will reconvene. So with that, we will pause to go to closed session. Thank you. We're reconvening from closed session. There are 3 items I need to report out of closed session. Here's the first. Notice of non-renewal of administrator employment contract. The board unanimously voted to take action pursuant to Ed Code 72-411 of non-renewal of contract for employee number 118413 as an administrator for the 25-26 academic year, and for the district to send a notice on the board's decision. It was moved by myself, seconded by Trustee Smith, and it was a 5-0 vote. The second item is a non-renewal of administrator employment contract. The board unanimously voted to take action pursuant to Education Code Section 72-411 of non-renewal of contract for employee number 114681 as an administrator for the 25-26 academic year, and for the district to send a notice on the board's decision. It was moved by Trustee Silva, seconded by Trustee Carpenter, and it was a unanimous vote. Finally, the Board of Trustees in closed session took action to reject the amended notice of claim dated January 2nd, 2025 on behalf of claimants Sandra Blackman and Santino Labate, supplementing and amending the notice of claim mailed by certificated mail on December 17th, 2024, and for the district to provide written notice of claim rejection to claimants' attorneys. The roll call in closed session was motion by Silva and seconded by Corona, and it was a 5-0 vote. Okay. We are now moving to comments. Item 4.1, comments of individual groups, delegations limited to agenda items. We do have 2 comments to be made by the same person on 2 different agenda items. So I'd like to invite Michelle Vogeltraut to come up to it's MSJC Eagles. So I will okay, I'll just let you in your first motion. It doesn't say what it might be about.
I'm catching you off guard.
Yes, no, I thought it might be, you were representing Academic Senate or.
Oh, no, not at all. Just
Okay.
myself. a
Go
colleague.
right ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Executive Cabinet, leaders of classified academic and students. I am here to share that 2 years ago tomorrow, you invested in my professional development to send me to a Asilomar Women's Leadership Program. It was a 3-day intensive retreat that brings together women leaders from all over the state. And at the end of the experience, we're supposed to stand in a circle and express what we're going to claim in staking for the future. And so it was, when I leave Asilomar, what will I do? And mine was to get out of my own way, embrace the fear, speak up, and engage. I'm here for a reason to share a story that links to accreditation, because in this way, I have now been able to sit on an accreditation team. I have visited another college. I have seen the way they do things, different from ourselves and yet similar in the same big goal, which is success of students. And I'm, in addition to that, I've been privileged to also sit on the DE pilot rubric for accreditation. All skills I intend to invest back into our program and our institution here. I'm here to express gratitude as a birthday gift, actually, to my dear lifelong friend, Liberté. You've never met her personally, but you've met her many times through me. Each year after Christmas, she starts her birthday countdown and it's 58 days to her birthday. And each day she commits to doing at least one small act of kindness for another human being. So Liberté's stepmom has now lost 2 houses in California to fires, including our most recent set, and then in Santa Rosa. I bring this up because as I think through what she has shared, her biggest thing is about giving and loving others. And we are in an accreditation cycle 2 weeks out from visits where we get to showcase what we do and the things that we do well. So as part of a compassionate exercise, I am here to express my gratitude to those who have been working hard. And while it is a global effort, there are certain folks who don't necessarily get the credit on the front lines. And so I am here to say thank you to the writing team of the accreditation leads, the steering team leads, and the team leads for all of our standards. To all the leaders and the students that participated in that work, and to you all for continuing to read very lengthy drafts. Office of Instruction held a wonderful all-faculty meeting last Friday, and that allowed us to learn more about where we're going with accreditation. So I'm extending my gratitude to Office of Instruction and the colleagues that work in that space. One thing we learned at that all-faculty meeting while learning about accreditation is that we have a situation politically that requires us to step out and be uncomfortable to serve our students. I'll pause. You can take me to 13.3.
And by the way, what I was searching for when I said MSJC was item 13.2, which was accreditation. Item 13.3 is your next item to speak on, which is the grading conventions proposed plus minus grading. You have 3 minutes. You may continue.
Thank you. I just wanted to express gratitude to Leticia, Luna Sims, and the colleagues that worked on those resources that empowered me to serve students. I believe that in collaboration, we've done a great job. And so I also wanted to extend some gratitude across the reins for the plus minus 13.3, the plus minus proposal that you'll hear tonight. Many faculty care about supporting students and elevating them as many ways we can. And one of those ways we can do it is by expanding the opportunities to pass them. So as I share these moments of gratitude, I want you to know that public speaking is actually not a strength. For those of you who know me, you might think I get up here and wing it, but there's a lot of nervousness about it. And that's part of my growth in the process of going through these leadership elements. And so I'm here saying thank you. And I'm also offering this opportunity for us to continue collaborating, for us to continue to produce opportunities for us to manifest and document what we do together, to expand and welcome everyone into that work, because there are no friends, there are no enemies. It's all of us doing this work together because it has to get done. So in closing, it's 4 days out from her birthday. She's someone who appreciates nothing but the gifts to others. So my expressing gratitude is for her to recognize that she has made an impact on my leadership style. So I will end with roses are red, violets are blue. You are MSJC and I am too.
Thank you, Professor Trout. Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're going to move on to item 5, reports. 5.1 is the board president and trustees. And for tradition, we'll start at the end and move our way down. So Trustee Smith, the floor is yours for a report.
Thank you. I was fortunate to be able to represent MSJC at Washington, D.C. and actually Trustee Corona and President Schultz joined us, and then also Karen Marriott was there to guide us. And she done a very good job also. But what I really wanted to highlight was a couple of the speakers we had. We had days of sessions and they brought in some incredible speakers. One thing I want to highlight of one of those sessions, we was fortunate to have, it was kind of interesting. There was 3 of them speaking, but 2 of them had been out of the Department of Ed. One of them had been with the Obama administration, was obviously very close to them. And the other one had been under Betsy DeVos and Trump's last one. And he was obviously close with that administration. And I don't know exactly what their title was in there, but they obviously was far enough up there to know what was going on. So we obviously had 2 different opinions from both sides of the aisle. My takeaway from that, and obviously they didn't agree on things. The thing that was interesting from the one that had been from the Trump administration, he says, we don't want to take the money away. We just want to take away the government so more of it could come to us. And that was good to hear. And actually the one out of the woman that was from the Obama administration, she didn't argue that, did she? And I was kind of surprised. I expected, a little bit of pushback because she would push back on him a lot. And she even agreed with some of the things that he would say, and he would agree with some of the things they would. Her big concern was what would happen if the Department of Ed goes away? How are we going to administer that stuff? And it scares me to death what they would do. But anyways, my takeaway from all of that was listening to them, that we should just be calm here because this will pass. This will pass. So that was good. There was an economist that spoke, and what we do is so important. The education that community colleges does, the trend for what we're putting out there, they can't get rid of us. I mean, we're here to stay. I was completely convinced of that. Of all the things they want to cut, they're not going to get rid of who makes their labor force, and we do a big part of it. The other one was we went into, we had several appointments with Congress people, and we was very fortunate with meeting with their aides, and they was receptive. But Raul Ruiz actually took a few minutes to speak with us that morning. And when we left, I asked him, I says, what can we do, you know, just to be prepared to go forward? Because if you read history very far back, we have been here before. You know, we've been incredibly divided, and there will be disruptions. So we do know this will pass, and we still live in the greatest country in the world. But what he said was, he said, you need to be prepared. He said, you need to be very, very vigilant with what you're doing with your dollars. He says, because it could happen that we go several months if the federal government decides to shut down some of these departments. Fortunately, this institution is in a very good place, but I think it's time that we're going to have to be even more vigilant, just so if this does happen, we could go several months without any federal money, and then how that trickles down. So as we go forward and everybody has ideas about new things, we just have to stay calm at this time, was my take on it. And that's what I have. Sorry to take so long, but I wanted to share that.
And all the way to DC, we expect a report. That was excellent. Thank you so much, Trustee Smith. Trustee Corona, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening. On January 23rd, I attended the MLK Junior MLK breakfast. On January 24th, that was great, by the way. On January 24th, the next day, we flew Sam, Roger, Karen, a government relations person, all the way to Sacramento. And we visited all the offices of our state representatives. We spoke with either the elected representatives or their staffers. We went there representing MSJC, trying to put our college on the map, fighting for the projects and programs and more funding to ultimately benefit our whole region. On February 9th, we flew to DC with Trustee Kevin Smith, Roger Schultz, Karen. We miss Sam. We missed other trustees too. But I think we did a pretty good job. We spoke to, again, the staffers and representatives who are serving our region. Again, we are fighting for more dollars and programs for our great institution and our region. And also want to say that I heard about the President's Honor Award, right? Ashley, you were there, Calvin, you were there, and I was able to see all the 200 pictures with them, shaking hands with all these wonderful students and happy parents. So that's such a great event. And Roger, you were in those pictures too. And I want to say that when you travel to DC or Sacramento, community colleges, they're well respected, right? There's a lot of institutions out there that don't have the reputation that we have. And they know how important we are for the community and for the region that these representatives also serve. And I want to say that to the staff here at MSJC, to the faculty, I just want to say thank you for all your incredible hard work, all your countless hours, all your grading, all your readings, your planning, and more. Again, I want to say thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Corona. Trustee Silva.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I have no report.
Good evening. I would like to also congratulate the honor roll students. Sadly, I missed it this year, but I was there last year and it was a great event. And it's always heartfelt that, you know, you see success and the smiles and how happy they are. So thank you to staff and faculty to get those students to where they are on their path to success. Otherwise, happy Galentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day. And remember, February is Heart Month, and be sure to take care of your heart. From my heart to yours.
Thank you, Trustee Carpenter. I have a very short report. I really enjoyed the President's Honor Roll ceremony. Before I went to it, I asked Roger, President Schultz, is there going to be shade? Because, I'm afraid about getting a sunburn. He goes, oh, I don't think so. And then I showed up and it was cloudy, windy, and I froze my tail off. But with that, and I know that I'm not going to steal President Schultz's thunder too much, but there were a lot of people there. It was wonderful. I will say this, because I'm sure it's not on your remarks. We offered all the students that won President's Honor Roll a little booklet that said, like, it was like a notebook that said President's Honor Roll, or a coffee cup, and a really nice looking coffee cup that said President's Honor Roll. And we tried to give away as many of those little notebooks as we could because everyone wanted the coffee cups. So we need more coffee cups, more coffee cups. That's my suggestion. I know we're ordering more. Those are great. Anyhow, that's all for my report. Thank you everyone for what you do. And we can move on now to the student trustee, Sam Cardenas.
Hey, hi, good afternoon, everybody. A lot has been happening this past month, but I'm glad to see you all here in good health. As I had previously mentioned in my past monthly report, obviously there is a lot happening within our government and a lot of things that are developing and changes that are concerning, although we are capable of powering through that. And I do want to give kudos to those who are already right on action on advocating for our students and the things that are concerning our students. In regards to our immigration students, I'm very glad to say that we are immediately jumped onto providing resources for them in order to let them know that this is an issue. This is something that as a parent, we cannot hide the fact that this is apparent, and it's something that has even reached our communities, families, people who are so concerned to go outside, and this is affecting our students as well. So it's so important to have this outreach, and I want to give kudos to those who have jumped right on it and helped providing these resources. Even on my Canvas show, immediately jumped on it, like resources. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for caring, and thank you for putting in the effort and the work for that. This past month, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go to the conference and speak with California legislators. That was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm very grateful for it. I was able to advocate for issues and things that we wanted to bring onto our campus and things that we want to provide for our students. And it's so important, and I'm very glad that I, as a student, was able to bring in the voice. So thank you so much for that opportunity. And concerns for things that I think that are important for our students. There is a couple of things that I'd like to bring up today to you all. I would like to bring attention to the differences between our student cafes. If we look at our MVC cafe and our Temecula cafe, I can say that that is a really nice cafe. It is very nice, very welcoming, very open, very warm. I cannot say the same for the SJ campus, as it is very dim, very unfriendly, very unwelcoming. And I want to bring that concern to you guys that if we have the opportunity to provide the warm and welcoming and nice setting for our students within 2 out of the 3 campuses, the third one deserves it. And the students deserve a space to have a comfortable and warm place to be at. Considering that we are trying to advocate for a student union center, it is important to already work with what we already have and work upon improving and making it the same as the other campuses, because they deserve that space, and they deserve something as the other ones do, because not many students don't even know that our other campuses have fantastic cafes. Wonderful. I love to sit around there. But if you walk into the SJ campus, it really is bland. And I think that students really deserve a nicer place to sit at, considering that our weather is, as it is, gloomy, and we're coming into cold weather and spaces for them to have shelter. That is the biggest space that we have on the SJ campus. I think we could work on making it better and making it nicer for the students. Another thing that I want to bring concern towards is our graduation evaluations. I was thankfully approved for my graduation for later this spring. Unfortunately, I was very confused, and navigating through the system was very confusing because at first I was denied. I had worked it through with counselors and I got it fixed and approved, but I had no idea that I was denied to begin with until I had brought it up to a counselor, which raises concern that this is probably something that is happening with other students, and had spoken with someone who works throughout that system. And it is true. It is not accessible. It is not something that is easy to navigate. Out of my 2 years of being on this college system, the only time I've ever been able to understand that system was the past couple of months, which raises concerns that this is something that can be worked upon and something that we can work on making it a lot easier to navigate for our students. It is something that never was even brought up to my attention until somebody had to manually put in the work to make sure that I know that I was denied and to see if I could get that fixed as soon as possible, because that is a horrible thing to have to worry about. So far into my progress, so far into what I believe that I worked hard for, and immediately down the drain because I did not have the requirements. Although it's fixed, not a lot of students have that opportunity or have that privilege to say that it was fixed immediately, everything is fine. Some need to restructure everything, replan everything, and not a lot of students want to have to face that issue and not want to deal with another semester. It is something that I hope that can be fixed, hoping that admin is able to work with to create a better navigational system. At the very least, a lot easier for students to navigate. This is all things that I have brought up with admin, so this is, we will work on it. I hope that we can work on it. Again, this is just an issue, and I think that this is something that we could work towards improving, not to bash on the system in general. It's something that we could work on, and it's okay to have mistakes and it's okay to have issues. Other than that, SGA is restructuring their system. Me and President Waluko are working towards creating a different system so then we could provide a better student government to our campuses and make sure that we are not neglecting any campuses, and work on making sure that we have more advocacy on each campus and more efficiency in comparison to other colleges. It is something that we are very prominent on working towards. It is definitely a lot of work in progress, and we have a little bit of time to do it as soon as possible, but I really hope that we have the capability of making a better system for our student representatives. Other than that, I think that is all. I appreciate transparency and advocacy for our students. And let us work on improving things that can be fixed. Let us end my report.
Before I throw it to cabinet, we've referenced a couple of times the Sacramento trip with student trustee Cardenas, and I know we have our speech professor here. I wish you could have seen the evolution of, it was almost like a public speaking and persuasive presentation. Trustee Cardenas went from very nervous, had her first presentation, to being polished and perfect in her delivery at the end. And it was great to see that evolution so quickly in the span of 4 hours. But again, it was so powerful. They didn't want to hear from me. They wanted to hear from our students. So it was very powerful to have such a good student representative speaking. So again, great job to our student trustee for missing classes and representing us well. So with that, I'll throw it to our cabinet first.
Well, I just have a brief report. I just wanted to give everybody an update that today is a happy National Cheddar Cheese Day. So I just wanted to cover for you. It is the third most popular cheese in the United States. Thank you.
Good evening. So I do want to start in thanking Sam and bringing forward her comments. I know she and I have been working very closely on a variety of different topics along with Claudia. So I look forward to continuing that work with them. We have made significant improvements to that process, but it still needs more improvement. So we will be working through that over the next semester. One thing I did want to mention was just our support for undocumented students, and to let you know the status of that work and what we've been up to. So we have an administrative policy or procedure 4315 that is immigration enforcement activities. And it outlines for staff and faculty and students the steps that the institution can take when an immigration official might be on campus. It's very clear and it outlines all of those different nuances so that they are familiar with those steps and that we are making sure that we're providing information appropriately and accurately if it is requested in a manner that is deemed appropriate through subpoenas or any other type of legal documentation that we have to review. So we did review that with our staff at a brown bag last week. And then we also shared that information at the all faculty meeting last Friday. So at its core, we have that information that went out, and we also sent out a communication to all faculty and staff last week outlining all of the different resources that we have available for our Dreamer students or their families. That communication was also sent out to all students. And then we did a personalized communication to just our Dreamers. We've assigned Lisa Campbell, who is our Associate Dean of Student Services, to be the point of contact for any student that might have any questions or concerns relative to immigration status or immigration on campus. In addition, we've also established additional resources in our mental health department so that if students have some concerns or anxieties or fears and are feeling unsettled, they are more than welcome to go and seek those services. And so we've made sure to make that available. We have also distributed, or we will be distributing, red cards, which allow students to know their rights. They can pick those up. We're distributing those right now. We had to do some fun things in the print shop and get those printed, but we will be disseminating those to all 3 campus locations and also across all programs and departments so that at any one point in time, a student can very discreetly go in, grab the information that they need for their families, their communities, and be able to share that with them. And we also will have information posted throughout the campus with flyers and whatnot so that folks just can run into that information and don't have to go to a specific location to find it. So we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of just those steps that we're taking and the ongoing support we're going to have for our Dreamers. On another note, I just wanted to let you know that we have placed a pause on our women's golf program, and we are replacing it with another women's sport, a women's cross country team. Yes, Trustee Corona is very excited. We're looking for coaches. So we're really excited. Many students are interested in that program. Oh, see, yes, you did it too. And so we're really excited about starting that up and getting at least some recruitment started this spring and into the summer months so that we can be ready for the season in the fall. And that concludes my report.
I'll be brief. In honor of Black History Month, I just want to make the announcement that our Emoja Program Scholar has been recognized and will be receiving this evening a proclamation from the Temecula Valley Commission on Race, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So I will be excusing myself shortly so I can go and support our Emoja program as they receive their proclamation and make a speech that they have been asked to do. So that's my report.
And I have no report tonight. Have a nice weekend.
We've touched on Washington, DC, I think at length. I can tell you that it has been a busy 3 weeks for higher education in addressing a lot of these changes. And it is one of the things that we heard about the dismantling of the Department of Education. While they were meeting with Congressman Ruiz, I was in a large group. I don't want to represent that I was amongst 100 people, but I was in a room with Senator Padilla and Senator Schiff from California, and both reiterated that the president cannot undo law. The Department of Education was founded and established by Congress, and that it's going to take some time before anything can happen. So again, I think those words of remaining calm, vigilantly watching and maintaining a posture where we will study and see what happens, but a lot happening. And I'm not going to reiterate what Rebecca touched on. We did have a town hall last week. It's interesting that we used to get around 275, 300 people during COVID. We were back to 275 in this last one. So people are engaged. Again, the topics were budget, enrollment, of course, the changes with the administration and the impact. But it was great to see so many people involved. We also touched on the Sacramento advocacy trip. I think we are starting to see some recognition of the unfunded growth that institutions like ours need to be fully funded for. So we will continue to keep that advocacy message going so that we can continue to provide access and quality instruction to our students. Not that we're ever compromising the quality of our instruction, but being able to have greater access is important. On a personal note, got to meet with, after traveling all the way across the country and getting in last night close to midnight, got to get up early this morning and we meet with the California Secretary of Labor, Stuart Knox, in Riverside. He told me he would be interested in coming to our campus and seeing what we're doing. He kept thinking I was part of Riverside's district because I was sitting next to Chancellor Woldub from RCCD, but said, no, we're a completely different animal, completely different world with completely different needs and industries down here. But they know who we are now. And with the help of our colleague, Tanya Burke, hopefully we can get him down here. And the President's Honor Roll, just to touch on that a little bit more, we had about 300 people RSVP, but I think we had probably close to 400, 450 people. It was beyond standing room only. And I think it's evidence that our students, and they were so proud of their families were so proud of their students to come up and just get a coffee mug or the little thing, but the families were reacting. It was like a mini graduation. And I think it is what we need to continue to do to acknowledge the great work of our students and their academic achievements. And then as if I wasn't subjected to enough accreditation this year for me, I get the joy of doing a one-day chair follow-up for a college where the entire team had retired. So I get to go, it sounds great, but it's not. I get to go to Napa College for a quick up and back in April. But I thought it was interesting that the entire team that was doing the follow-up had all retired. We're in the process of retiring. So fun times. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. We are now going to move on to item 5.4, Student Government Association Report. Claudia, can you tell me your last name? I'm sorry.
It's Gualuco. Gualuco. Yes. No, you're okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It has been a pretty busy month for student government. We have a few new people and we're working on a series of programs and events to hopefully boost engagement with the student population this semester. Another thing that we've been working on is an ad hoc committee to restructure, as student trustee Cardenas mentioned earlier. The goal is to basically create a council that is designated for each campus in hopes that we would address the issues of that particular campus better and represent the student population there better as well. So hopefully we will get that finished in the next few weeks and we'll have a new council up and running for next year. Another issue that I wanted to bring up, since we are approaching graduation season, as Sam mentioned earlier, the concern of not being sure whether or not your graduation application is approved is actually an ongoing thing for students. Right now, I've personally spoken to a student who thought that they had everything ready and was ready to graduate, and they found out that they were missing one class and they decided to drop, actually. So they were discouraged enough that they didn't want to continue on just for that one class. So it is a concern, and I would hope that we can find a solution that would address this systematically, where it is much more clear for students whether or not they are on track to graduate in the time that they're expecting. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that I attended a couple of conferences last semester with a few other people in student government, and we are starting to gained traction as far as reputation as well as size with our student government in comparison to the other schools that are in our region. And we are currently only sending 6 students per district policy, whereas a few other schools are sending a considerable more number of people in comparison to us. So I believe Moreno Valley sent about 25 students. So I am looking to hopefully expand our delegations for next year. And I know that if it's a California conference, that's not as big of an issue, but I'm hoping that we can also have a bigger delegation for our Washington DC conference next year as well. So just to kind of keep you all in the loop for that. And then finally, I did want to highlight that due to the recent changes in our federal regulations, we do have a considerable portion of our student demographics that are currently living in anxiety and uncertainty over their living situation in the United States. And I'm primarily in the San Jacinto campus, and so I do see that community struggling to understand what's going on nationally. And so I do want to share that I appreciate the stance that the college has taken and the email that we received from the school, and as well as the expansion of the resources that are provided for the students. But I did also want to bring up that this is still an ongoing concern for the students. And it's affecting a large number of us, really. With that said, we are holding a student town hall, hopefully either at the end of March or the beginning of April. The idea is more of a students for students, where we will open up the space for anyone to really share their concerns. Anyone from the board or from the executive cabinet is more than welcome to join and see what students are really concerned about firsthand. So once we get that up, hopefully it's before the next meeting and I'll be able to share more details, but we will be holding that. It will also be online. That will be at the San Jacinto campus. Hopefully that's a community that would appreciate an opportunity to share their experiences and thoughts. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. 5.5 classified Senate report. No report from classified Senate. So we'll move on to 5.6 academic Senate report with Professor Torres.
Good evening, everybody. I guess my mic is on. Just a short report. One big thing I do want to report out is that we had our Senate Constitution revision vote. Several Senate bodies have worked on this for years. The last revision was in 2008, so we got the results back. Right now, the current Constitution says we need about 60% of approval, but we ended up with 71% approval of the votes, so we are operating under a new Constitution. So that's very good. I'd like to actually publicly sort of thank everyone who worked on this for so long, multiple revisions. It's red lines upon red lines upon red lines. Is it perfect? No, but it's a much improved and I think allows for the expansion of TVC and the other things that will happen here. So we're actually working on a transition plan right now so we can synchronize all of the various Senate positions and terms, including adding some more associate faculty, including adding a senator here for TVC. So that is a big one for us. I still want to report out that my former position as vice president at San Jacinto remains unfilled, so we don't have a flex coordinator yet. Right now, Ron and I are working on keeping up with those requests and getting them approved. We're getting Ron added to that queue up here pretty soon. And I would also like to mention the All Faculty Day last Friday. It was very pleasant. It was informative. I'd like to thank everybody involved in getting that together. It was really well done, and I appreciated that. And let folks know that we are here as faculty ready with the RSI changes that we need to work on and accreditation process. We're happy to be involved more with that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
So much. Thank you. Before we move on to the consent agenda, I almost didn't graduate on time. I had to take a third senior writing seminar was only required to take two, but I took two in US history. I needed to take one in world history. So that wasn't fun, but I made it eventually. So I hope students, if they find setbacks, buckle down, do the work and find a way through. With that, we'll find a way to the consent agenda. Item 6.1, approval of consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this?
This is, we could pull items.
Yes.
I'd like to pull item 9.2 for discussion.
9.2 is non-resident tuition fee. So we'll, with anyone else, with the exception of item 9.2, is there any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for a vote from the student trustee.
Aye.
All right, trustees, please vote. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we'll move directly into item 9.2, which is non-resident tuition fee, capital outlay fee. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve, Chair. I'll second.
Thank you. Now we can open this item up to discussion. Trustee Corona.
Yes, I was looking at the item. It's so $313 dollars per unit for non-resident students, right? But in addition, it was a $58 per credit unit for capital outlay fee that they want to attach, that we want to attach. So, I mean, I appreciate all the information, how we looked at the state average of what students are that are non-residents being charged. That information is helpful, but I just wanted to know why it's increasing. Because if I'm looking at the numbers, if the students that are non-residents, and I had a couple questions too, because right now there's a lot of students that are trying to do their FAFSA, and they were born here, they're citizens. I don't know if they're going to be affected, but their parents are not, and so they don't want to continue filling out their FAFSA because they're afraid they're gonna, like, their parents are gonna get possibly deported. So I just wanted some feedback. Like, are those students that are the ones gonna be affected, or?
Let me just step back. So each year, the governing board is required to adopt a non-resident tuition, and there are a few different methodologies by which that amount can be chosen. So for example, the statewide average cost per FTS is $400. Our cost at $313 was a lower amount. So we chose that lower amount, which is really a testament to the efficiency with which we're serving students at the college. We're doing it at a lesser cost per FTS than those around the state. I'm so sorry, per unit. I apologize. I said per FTS, but per unit. The $313 is before you this evening is actually lower than last year's, which was $318. And the capital outlay contribution is the same. And the idea is this: for those non-resident students, they're not supported by the state taxpayer through apportionments like our resident students are, and as a consequence have to make up the difference in the cost for their education that's normally carried by the state for our resident students. And so that's the reason for the difference in rates, but it does actually lower for this year than before. Oh, gotcha. So actually that's a kind of an enrollment services question about the definition of non-resident. So I'll let you
So
speak.
non-resident is not of the residents of California, the state of California. So it is not dealing with immigration status whatsoever. It has everything to do that you have to go through a specific process to ensure that you're a resident of California in order to be eligible for the tuition costs. State aid, correct. So it's separate, a separate issue entirely.
Thank you for sharing that, because I was just running the numbers, and yeah, for a student who's taking 15 units, with the cost per unit and that addition, it'd be, with cost of books, it'd probably be about $10,000 per year. For 2 years, that's kind of significant. But I mean, if you say it's that's going to be actually lower than it was last year, then that's good to know. It's because I have a lot of my spouse is a counselor, right? So they're all concerned, and they just want to make sure that those students are not going to be the ones that are affected.
for some context, I did have communications with a CBO of a neighboring district who shared with me that their district did adopt the $400 per unit level. And so, and again, we could have recommended and adopted that here. But we are running the program very economically. We want to pass it along to all of our students.
Yeah, because this area, I would say this area, depending, I mean, where you live, but in the area that I represent, I would say those students, their families, probably their income is lower than the state average.
They are residents, though, if they're living within your service area and they've been doing so for the past year, when they apply to MSJC, they will not be charged the non-resident tuition. It will only be for those that are essentially out of state.
It's good to know. Thank you.
With no further discussion, we'll call on the student trustee to vote.
Aye.
Right, and trustees, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Move on now to the open agenda, human resources. Item 11.1. I'm waiting for it to load. Denial of claim. A claim has been filed against the district dated December 17th, 2024. The district's insurance administrator recommends a routine denial of all claims with subsequent processing by a claims adjuster. So to vote aye on this is to deny the claim. So do we have any discussion on this item? Or do we have a motion to approve? I'm sorry.
Chair Ashley, I move to approve.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, student trustee, please vote.
Aye.
Okay, trustees, please vote.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 12, comments of individual groups, delegations limited to non-agenda items. Do we have anyone? There are no non-agenda speakers. Who wants?
I knew it was coming.
How did you learn to bend it like Beckham?
Oh, my. You know, that actually relates back to a conversation we had earlier today where they were wanting to take some pictures. I'm like, you know, if you Google the last name Beckham, there are images of really beautiful Beckhams that you could just use the picture of. And I'd be totally fine with that. That would be fantastic. So absolutely. You know, that's the movie, of course, that provided a lot of fame for me. I appreciate that. So instead of bend it like Beckham, how about budget like Beckham?
Well,
Right? Let's do that. Well, I thought you'd enjoy that. Yeah.
Like Beckham, that's well done, sir. But let me move us to item 13.1 to keep us official. We'll move on to our information agenda. That means we don't need to vote on these items, but we need to listen carefully to Beckham's budget bending. All right, so this is the governor's proposed budget presented by Michael Beckham, Vice President of Business Services. I suppose interim still applies. You are on, sir.
All right, thank you so much. And so without further ado, let's move this forward. So the governor released his proposed budget for the next fiscal year, the 2025-26 fiscal year, a few weeks ago. And of course, this is the beginning of what kicks off basically the legislative actions that will ultimately culminate into a budget act for the governor's consideration in June. So the governor's priorities for this budget cycle really mirror those for the past few budget cycles, which is to support those initiatives that improve the lives of Californians. And he's got a deep commitment to education, healthcare, housing, economic development, and public safety. The governor's budget plan does continue to raise some alarm. However, due to the high reliance of the state's revenues on high-income individuals whose capital gains tend to be very volatile. And that can be a very large percentage of the state's personal income tax collections. And of course, that has led to a lot of volatility in the state's revenues over the past few years. And so as a consequence, the governor is proposing to increase the mandatory deposit level in the state's rainy day fund, which they call the budget stabilization account, from the current 10% level to 20% of the state's general fund revenues, and to also exempt those from the state's appropriations limit. The idea being that if the state were to have a large windfall of revenues, like we saw it's been now several years ago, 3 years ago, that instead of that appropriation counting towards the state limit and having to refund to taxpayers the excess, instead allowing those excess revenues to be deposited into that rainy day fund. One of the things I find interesting about the percentage level going from 10 to 20% is that would be a higher reserve level than we were forced to move to under the COVID-19 emergency conditions allowance, which is right around 17% for us. And so the state is even seeing that their reserve level at 10% is too low and is shooting now for a 20% level. So the governor's budget is predicated on an economic forecast that's expecting growth to continue to be driven by personal consumption, but they note that that personal consumption is slowing. So this is basically another variation of the theme we've heard for the past several years in the governor's forecast, which is basically a growing but slowing economy. And so the governor points to certain metrics that they're expecting to see hit with respect to the unemployment rate declining to 4.7% and plateauing in 2028, looking to see inflation at about 2.2 to 2.3% nationwide, but a little bit higher in California, and the target federal funds rate between 2.5% and 2.75% over the long term. And of course, they point out the potential risk factors that would jeopardize that economic forecast and consequently the revenue model that they're using to program the state's budget. And so things that you would expect, stock market and asset volatility, because of course that would impact the capital gains collections that they're relying upon, potential paths of inflation and interest rates. And of course, they're worried about increases in both of those values. High inflationary environments are very difficult to work in, and increases in interest rates have the effect of slowing transactions in the real estate world and also make it more difficult for business to raise liquidity to grow. And of course, other things that you might expect, like geopolitical uncertainty, and with the change in administration in Washington, any impacts that that might have on factors that California's economy depends upon. This chart compares the current year enacted budget, which is represented by the gray bars in the chart, to the governor's proposed budget for next year, which is represented by the blue bars. The chart is measuring dollars in billions of dollars. So when you're seeing 297.9 for the total state budget for the current fiscal year, that's $297.9 billion. And you'll notice that the first pair of bars are for the overall total state budget. So that's both the general fund and special funds. And that is increasing at approximately 8% over the current level in the governor's proposed plan. And the same is true for the second set of bars, which represents just the state's general fund by itself, moving from 211.5 to $228.9 billion, an 8% increase. The last two sets of bars show the community college portions of each of those different ways of viewing the state budget, the overall state budget and the general fund contribution to community colleges. And while there are modest increases, they're nowhere close to 8%, and I'll continue to kind of expand upon that later in the presentation. So with respect to Proposition 98 funding, the top half of this chart shows all Proposition 98, that would be the K-12 system and community colleges combined. And if you kind of focus your attention here on the change in percentage for the proposed budget next year to the revised amount for the current year, you'll notice that it's roughly a flat figure. For community colleges, we're seeing a slight increase in Proposition 98 contribution to our system as a whole. In both cases, there's a pullback from the state's general fund contribution to Proposition 98, driven by strong property tax receipts that are expected to come in the next year. And now moving to the ongoing investments in the community college system that the governor proposes. So the governor's proposing a little bit less than $360 million system-wide for the community colleges. And that's largely dominated by, I don't know why I've got some feedback going on. Anyway, I'll stand back a little bit. It's like, stay away from me. That's fine. I can do that. So the ongoing investments are largely dominated by cost of living adjustments and apportionments, and some of our categorical programs at 2.43%, and $30 million allocation for 0.5% of enrollment growth in the system. The other smaller contributions are to support more distant programs from our campuses, things like the statewide common data platform and the career passport programs are more system-wide initiatives. On the one-time investments in the system, a little bit less than $400 million. $300 million of this are to system goals in technology transformation and common cloud platforms. So the Chancellor's Office has a vision of creating a common computing system and student information system for the totality of the community colleges in the system. And this is kind of the first large-scale investments they've gotten in that connection. And of course, that ties back to the ongoing commitments that I shared with you in the last slide, where they're providing some ongoing funding to help support those initiatives into the future. The balance of that, again, is to support the prior learning credit and career passport program. That's 93 million of these one-time funds being sent to the colleges, college system rather, and again, mostly a state initiative as well. So of course, the governor always has a cautionary note in the budget plan, and here the governor is warning that while this year the budget is balanced. So notice I didn't talk about massive deficits, right, and maneuvers that are being used to cure those deficits, which is a contrast to the last two budget cycles. The last budget cycle being the most harrowing, where we're up to a $61 billion deficit, according to the Legislative Analyst's Office. So that's not the case this year. In fact, the Legislative Analyst's Office is roughly in agreement with the Department of Finance. The governor's budget plan for the coming fiscal year that he's proposed is a balanced one. And provides significant reserves in the coming fiscal year. However, for the years following the next fiscal year, so that would be fiscal year 26, 27 and thereafter, the state does anticipate shortfalls driven by expenditures exceeding revenues. And in fact, one can somewhat understand how you can be in a balanced state this year, but be looking at, for the next fiscal year in the proposed budget plan versus the out years by examining those reserve funds. And so this chart shows the trajectory of the state's 4 reserve funds going back to 22-23 before the state started tapping the reserve funds to the governor's proposed budget in 25-26. Again, dollars are being measured here in billions of dollars. And I just want to touch on each of these 4 reserve funds in turn. I'm going to start at the bottom with that lime green scale. So that's the safety net reserve fund. And this is basically to backstop the state's social welfare programs. And you'll notice that that was never really a highly funded reserve. It actually peaked at about $900 million. And it was drained in the last budget act, and the governor does not propose making any additional contributions to that fund. It's going to continue at a balance of 0. The next graph up in this blue color, this is the public school system stabilization account, or the Proposition 98 rainy day fund, more colloquially. And this fund topped out a little over $8 billion in 22-23. And the last budget act, the governor's administration and the legislature agreed to completely drain that reserve fund to wrap up the issues they had with the overstatement of Proposition 98 estimates in the 22-23 fiscal year. And you might remember I had a terrible chart that was literally tracking all of the moving pieces for how the governor's administration was trying to cover that overestimate and trying to cut a deal with CTA to maintain Proposition 98 funds. And so in any event, I won't run you back through that. I'm sure that it's probably already surging through your mind. You're like, yeah, please stop talking about that. And so the good news was that the Budget Act was proposing for the current fiscal year to make a contribution back into that reserve fund. The governor's proposed budget is sustaining that and is actually increasing slightly more in the next fiscal year under his plan. So one of the nice things is that for the first time in a couple of years, we're finally seeing on the Proposition 98 side of the budget a rosier picture insofar as not only meeting the obligation of Proposition 98 in the governor's proposed plan, but actually now starting to rebuild the reserve fund. Again, at the last budget act just in June, that fund was drained, nothing in it. And so I just want to remind folks of that. that history and what happened to that fund. So now that I've started from the bottom and addressed the two bottom charts, it makes sense, of course, to go to the top and start from the top. So here we go. So the topmost graph here is the budget stabilization account. So this is the state's rainy day fund. And you'll notice that it topped out at about $22 to $23 billion back in 22-23. And increased a little bit more in the next year. So it topped out in 23-24 at about $23 billion. And the last Budget Act made a withdrawal from that fund, and the governor's proposing to make another withdrawal from that fund for the next fiscal year. And so that would be a $7.1 billion withdrawal to balance the budget for that next fiscal year. The next graph, the purple graph, which is the Special Fund for Economic Uncertainty, I love this one. The state actually gives its ending balance a fancy name, the Special Fund for Economic Uncertainty, but it's nothing more than the ending fund balance, which is the accrual of prior year revenues that have not been spent yet. And you'll notice that, again, that fund hit about a $21 billion high water mark back in 22-23. And we've seen that ending balance being consumed in each of the budget years from 23-24 to the current one. The governor is proposing to further reduce that fund balance by about $3.8 billion to balance the budget plan for the next fiscal year. So putting those together, that's about $11 billion in one-time funds that the state is using to balance the budget plan for 25-26. So the reason I was saying that it kind of gives you an understanding of the governor's comment I shared in the prior slide is that you can see that expenses are exceeding revenues because the state is having to turn to the savings account to the tune of $11 billion to balance the budget for this upcoming year if the governor's proposed plan is accepted. And so, unfortunately, that leaves us with a negative outlook for those fiscal years past 25-26. This chart's produced by the Legislative Analyst's Office, but the interesting thing here is, again, Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst's Office agree on the fact that there will be outsized multi-billion-dollar deficits in the out years. They disagree in the magnitude, which is always the case. Department of Finance usually has a lower number. The Legislative Analyst's Office always has a higher number. The reality usually ends up being somewhere in between, right? And that's what you see here. So in orange are the Department of Finance's estimates. That's the governor's administration, their estimates. And you'll notice that for 26-27, it's right about $13 billion, which conspicuously is close to the $11 billion that expenses are exceeding revenue in his proposed plan for next year. And when you contemplate the fact that you have increases in costs from year to year, it's simply that same $11 billion incremented upward for increased operating costs in that next year. And then the governor's Department of Finance shows that growing a little bit larger for 27-28 and then receding backwards in 28-29. The Legislative Analyst's Office has a slightly different trajectory where they're showing a strictly monotonic increase in that deficit over those three fiscal years, and the deficits ranging from $20 to $30 billion. So it'll be interesting to see in this budget cycle how the legislature responds to the governor's proposed budget. It's interesting to note if the governor had maintained a flat budget and not had an 8% increase in the overall budget plan, that those withdrawals from the savings account would essentially not have been necessary. And that would have left those reserve funds in place for addressing these out year deficits. But where it stands now, the state's reserve funds went from about $51 billion prior to the withdrawals being made to now the proposed budget, putting that at a balance of $17 billion after the next fiscal year. So there's been significant withdrawals on the state's part to balance its budgets over the past few years. And that completes my presentation. Are there any questions?
It's a little out there. I know we have a federalist system, states do their thing, federal government does theirs. But at the state, it looks like, it's not looking that great, but it's not so bad. When you compared it to the $36 trillion that are federal government,
Well, that's true. And if you
is that
compare,
gonna affect us possibly?
well, so it'll depend on how the solutions come forward. The federal government has had large deficits for a very long time. and has been criticized roundly for those. And so I'm not sure what the solutions that will look like. I think for a long time, there hasn't been really a will to address the issue. So it'll be interesting to see as policy evolves at the federal level, how that goes. There's a fortunate with an asterisk next to it, which is that the amount of federal funding that we rely on for our operations is not as nearly as significant as our state funding. But of course, our state relies on federal revenues to come in. And so there could be an impact there to us. But unfortunately, I don't have enough information to speculate on what that might look like for us. At this juncture, I've just been happy to see a budget rollout that has been kind of plain vanilla. No big dramatic deficit numbers that have to be addressed with some sort of budget solutions. No debate between Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst Office for the 25-26 year on how much the budget problem is and how they take a different approach at looking at it. They're in concert here with this budget plan, and it appears that the LAO is rather supportive of the plan that has been put out. So compared to $61 billion in deficits last year, I'll take this for sure. This is a much better place for the state to be.
Thank you, Vice President Beckham.
All right, thank you.
We're going to move now to item 13.2, accreditation update. And I'm going to read this because there's some dates in there that we need to pay close attention to. Vice President Teague and Dean Sterling are going to come up and provide an update of our institutional self-evaluation report, ICER, and the upcoming accrediting commission for community and junior colleges, ACCJC, site visit, wait for it, scheduled February 25th to 27th. That's in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. Okay, the floor is yours and do your thing.
All right, thank you so much. So Anna and I are going to tag team this evening. We don't have a formal presentation with you. So what we've done is we've provided you copies of the court inquiry response and then also the tentative interview schedule. So we're going to kind of break some things down for you so that you understand what's coming in the next 2 weeks. We're really excited to be able to welcome the team on February 25th. They will be arriving. We've been meeting with them regularly and having conversations and setting up the logistics for that site visit. They will be taking place here at the Temecula Valley campus, and we will be having a main team room for the visiting group to center their work. And then we will also have all interviews in person here at this campus. Anna will go over all the interviews here in just a moment, but we're poised and ready. We've set up everything for the team room. IT has been established. Anything you can imagine, parking, food, key card access, keys to the building, not to the building, but keys to their room so that they can get in and that it's secure. And then we have also followed up with some additional resources that they've requested specifically for distance education and to be able to have access to the 50 Canvas shells that they would like to sample in addition to those that they looked at in the previous term. And so we are working with them. They will be arriving. We are going to be having our ACCJC liaison, Melanie, join us for campus tours on Monday prior to the visit. So she will be going to the San Jacinto campus and also to the Menifee Valley campus and sharing that information with the team. So they're not doing formal tours that we are accustomed to in the past. So a new piece of this process has been the availability, or actually the opportunity, for us to submit a court inquiry response in relation to the 6 court inquiries. And what that has allowed us to do is essentially provide additional evidence and information and narrative specific to those court inquiries prior to their arrival. So what we are asking folks to do is obviously review this document in detail prior to their arrival so that you have some familiarity with some of the additional evidence that we're providing the team. And then obviously we will be meeting with all of those that are being interviewed sometime next week. I believe it's Thursday the 20th, to be able to walk through expectations of what the interviews like. And essentially going through some mock questions potentially on those core inquiries for each area, similar to what we've done with the Board of Trustees in the past, so that everyone is very calm, cool, and collected and ready to be able to provide as much information to that visiting team as necessary. So we have a copy for you. We will be posting this onto the board agenda after this evening. We have forwarded this copy to the visiting team members so that they can begin their review prior to arriving. And then we will also be publishing all of this to our website on Tuesday, making sure that it's disseminated broadly so that everyone in the college community has access to all of the documents on the SharePoint site. So everything is there. You may have seen on our main website, main page in the banner, we have an accreditation visit scrolling through, along with the opportunity for folks to provide third-party comments if they should choose. So we had a previous deadline to report any third-party comments. We hadn't received any as of the date, I believe it was the 20th of January. However, we will make any of those comments available to the team if they arrive beyond that timeline. And so with that, I just want to quickly walk through, you'll see the 6 core inquiries. We're not going to go through those in details, but you will see that essentially we've broken down each area by the information that they requested in the core inquiry report initially. And so they had some questions, concerns, and so we were able to address those, and those are all outlined. This isn't to say that folks are using this as a script necessarily, but this is the information supplemental to the interviews. And the interviews will have that opportunity for other folks to be able to share their experiences relative to that core inquiry or that standard specifically. But please, we ask that you review this. It is our intention that we will be meeting with the 2 board members that have been identified for the interviews. That's Trustee Silva and Trustee Ashley, so that we can walk through specifically who you'll be interviewing with and all of the details specific to that day. So obviously there's a little bit of protocol and whatnot, and we want to make sure you're as prepared as possible, just as we want all of the interviewees to be prepared. We will be meeting with management leadership next Friday. I don't know that yet. It'll get on their calendar just to make sure that everyone locked and loaded for that visit the subsequent week.
Be ready.
Be ready. It's going to be a lot of information coming out, folks. But we are extremely excited by them coming. This has been 2 years in the making. Our teams have worked very hard on this product. We're very proud of the work that we've done, and we are definitely ready for them to arrive and be able to share the good work that we've done relative to the ICER and core inquiry. With that, I'm going to allow Anna to be able to outline the schedule and make sense of the Morse code that is outlined on the document.
All right, so as Rebecca mentioned, you have a copy of the tentative schedule. It is tentative because we have sent this over to the ACCJC team for them to review and provide any feedback if they want any changes to the schedule. You will notice that some of the core inquiries have more than one interview scheduled. And again, that's based on the positions that they requested to be interviewed for each of the each of the inquiries. We didn't per se select those. They gave us positions and then we added those folks in. So based on the fact that some folks are in multiple different core inquiries, we had to break up some of those interviews to be able to accommodate those schedules, as well as the folks from the ACCJC team being in multiple core inquiries. So again, that's kind of how some of the division of the interview schedule has been set up. So you'll see that again, primarily the interviews are taking place Tuesday and Wednesday from 9 a.m. to about 3 p.m. And that will be in conjunction with that open forum, which is again open to the entire campus community, except for the Board of Trustees and the executive team. But any members of the public that would like to provide any opportunity to speak to the team, they have that opportunity at that time. That is on Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then the final report out forum will be on Thursday at noon. Tentatively, again, this will be based on how the team, if they need to, do any additional interviews, the wrap up of their report, their working sessions, their meetings with the president and the ALO, all of those things. But tentatively right now scheduled for 12 p.m. on Thursday. And that's where they'll be sharing their recommendations for actions that they'll be presenting to the commission. So you will see if you look through the tentative schedule, again, every position and individual that was requested for interviews per each core inquiry. And as mentioned, both trustee Silva and trustee Ashley will be interviewed on Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. right now. So if you have any questions, obviously, about core inquiry report or the tentative schedule, we're happy to answer any of those.
So the interviews are gonna take place in the Temecula campus all the days?
The ACCJC team, they chose the campus where the interviews would be taking place.
They don't walk the campuses?
So for this visit, because the core inquiries aren't dealing specifically with college sites, they're not walking as a team through that. So they are sending a delegate to be able to tour the San Jacinto campus and also the Menifee site, but they're not required to do so on these visits.
Okay.
And again, the interview schedule is condensed because they're coming to just speak with us about these 6 inquiries, not the entire set of standards as they've done previously.
If Brian Silva or Ashley can't make it, I could be there.
Great. No, we appreciate that. So definitely then school up, trustee Hollister, on the last core inquiry on, participatory governance, because that will be the specific area that they'll be speaking to y'all about. However, it is not out of the range of possibility that they'll ask you some other questions relative to any of the other core inquiries and your familiarity with that.
Pro tip, start with number 6 trustees and work your way through the rest of them.
And it's a very succinct document. We didn't go crazy, didn't go 500 pages crazy on this one. We made it so that it was very clear and very direct because we knew that it would be augmented with whatever interviews are taking place.
And as Rebecca mentioned, you'll have copies, a digital copy provided, attached to the agenda after the meeting. So if you want to review any of the additional evidence that's been provided, those are all live links that you'll be able to access.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I feel like we're ready.
Showtime.
We have to be. Okay, last but not least, item 13.3, MSJC grading convention, proposed plus/minus grading. Here's some background. The Academic Senate and Student Government Association have studied the benefits of transitioning our grading policy from letter grade to plus/minus. Professor Ron Newman, Executive Academic Senate Vice President and Chair of Communication Studies, will present an overview on the plus/minus grading convention and recommendation for the board's consideration. Thanks for coming. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I understand I am standing between you and going home, so I'll try to keep this under 30 minutes. Maybe 3 minutes.
I
So,
can hear you.
okay,
Your 3 minutes starts now.
thank you. So you can see with the title slide here, we're modifying MSJC's final course grading conventions to include plus/minus grading. Just looking at the governance process here, this has gone through Academic Senate twice and passed unanimously. It's gone through Executive Senate twice and passed unanimously. It's gone through SGA and passed with a 9-1 vote. It's gone through various committees and passed through. So we've done our diligence on this to make sure everyone has approved it. So the policy overview, right now we use whole letter grading. So it's A, B, C, D, and pass, not pass, and that. We're going to plus/minus. So we're adding pluses and minuses to them. The action that we're looking for is amending the appropriate board policies and administrative procedures that govern academic records and symbols. And I'll look at that in just a second. Title V here allows us to do this. It says we may use plus/minus grading. So that's what we're proposing. Current board policy 4230 refers to administration policy 4230. So that policy looks something like this. So it's got the evaluative grade, A, B, C, D, F, pass, not pass, and satisfactory progress, and the corresponding grade point averages there. So this is what we currently have. So it's pretty straightforward. What we're proposing is going to this, which is A+, A minus, B+, B minus, and so forth. and then the corresponding grade point averages. The one thing, you'll look at it and you'll see it goes 4, 4, then 3.7, 3.3, 3.0, 2.7. A pluses will not get any kind of addition to the grade point average, but it will be reflected on the transcript that it was an A plus. So where we are right now, A, B, C, D, F, and where we're going, A plus, A minus, and a proposed percentage range. This would not be mandated. This will be up to the individual faculty members, but you can see that with this proposal, it would be 96 and above would be an A plus, 93 to 95 would be an A, and 90 to 92 would be an A minus, and so forth. So again, pretty straightforward, but this last column would be up to the individual faculty member in their individual classes to decide what they wanted to do. Okay, so institutional considerations doesn't cost us anything. And it's easy to implement. We already actually have this in our system because we take transcripts from other institutions that use this process. So it's just a matter, from what we understand, it's a matter of turning it on. It's not a matter of rebuilding anything. I'm getting weird looks over here, but yes. Simple for me. Yeah. And this proposal was actually part of the accreditation process as an example of our governance process. So it was used as evidence for that. Okay. Other institutions in California that use this, K-12 and high schools use this. So for our students that are coming in next year, there will be no change. It'll just be what they've had in high school. So they won't even know that there's any difference. And students that are going to UCs and Cal States, 30 of the 33 already use this system. So it would just be those 3 that would be different. So we're really going to be the same as for the people coming in and the people going out. It'll just be a continuation for them. Concluding remarks: our current system of assigning final course grades could be more equitable. And it also gives equitable and accurate, and it also gives our students a competitive advantage in some areas because they can show a plus rather than just a straight grade, whether that's quantitatively by showing a B plus or a C plus, but also qualitatively by showing that A plus. Even though the grade points might be the same, seeing an A plus on a transcript might make a difference to an admitting college. So this is within the Title V regulations, robustly supported by faculty and student government bodies at MSJC, and it makes MSJC students more competitive on the whole. So I will leave the rest of the time for any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
This will come to the board after, or
This
are
will
we-
come up next
month?
next month.
Okay,
yes.
and I'm just curious, because you highlight it in the report, and I noted it when I read it yesterday, the C minus may not be used.
Yeah, because for colleges that are accepting grades, they don't want to take a C minus. So we stop it at a C. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That was gonna be my next question. I was just wondering, yeah, why don't you have a C minus, D plus?
Yeah, it's the institutions that would be accepting.
Plus?
Yeah.
I got a question. I'm assuming this will kick in at the first summer session? When did?
No, so when we initially went through this process, it will take some time to program. It is a feature that you can turn the switch on, but there are catalog rights we have to consider. There's marketing we need to consider for students so that they understand those changes. We're coming into Common Course numbering. So it was the intention that we would take, I believe, this next academic year to be able to program all of that and begin it in fall of next year, which would be, help me, fall of 2027.
I said it was easy for me, not them.
I know it says that the high schools, they do it, you know, Not everybody does it, but yes, a lot of teachers do use it.
It's available and with this, faculty have the choice to do it. So if this proposal gets approved as a faculty member, I can choose to use a plus minus, or I could choose to use whole letter grades. Currently, I only have a choice to use whole letter grades. I can't do a plus or a minus. And for a lot of the STEM courses, that makes a difference because it's very competitive getting into nursing programs. So a B plus could be the difference between someone getting into a nursing program versus a straight B might not get them into a nursing program. So, yeah.
There might, only because it's my day job, we might need to train teachers on changing grading schemes in Canvas when this takes place, because it's not obvious in Canvas how to do it if you're going to change from plus minus or traditional. So,
Correct.
What is it,
It'll be
alpha and district alpha and?
well, that's infinite campus, but Canvas it's tricky. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming, and good job on your report. Very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, we all are moving now to 14.1 adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote from the student trustee.
Aye.
And please vote, trustees. Aye.
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 We are adjourned.